So another change of scenery, trying to do this every once in a while. Our summers are short, so trying to squeeze in as much of this outdoor stuff as possible before the weather gets crappy again. Anyway, here we are at 6 Mile Lake Provincial Park. I have kind of a long history with this place, 6 Mile Lake, not the park, because my family used to have a cottage here. Anyway, we've been coming here camping for a little while now, and yeah, it's, you know, one of our favorite places, so I thought I'd do some drone footage here at the park. So you've probably gathered by the title that I'm going to be doing this one about the DJI Mini 2. This has had some market improvements over the original Mini. It's a drone that my dad owns, so I have a little bit of experience as to the improvements between that drone and this one. We've got the higher resolution camera, and we've also got slightly more powerful motors, so it can handle itself in the wind a little bit better. Although I found the DJI Mini 1 being pretty good actually in the wind considering its size. And now with the firmware update in this, we've also got a Pro mode, which gives us some flexibility with some manual controls over things like the shutter speed, which will be of interest to those people trying to get cinematic footage out of their drone. So that being said, I wasn't going to fly this with ND filters on. I'm not even that big a proponent of ND filters because I find, you know, when you're flying a drone high enough, you're not really close enough to anything for motion blur to occur. So the 180 rule isn't really applicable to drones. The only reason you really want to use NDs most of the time is to give yourself a little bit of headroom to avoid overexposure. Another reason I'd use filters is maybe a circular polarizer to bring out things like the sky or knock back some of the reflections on water. So unfortunately we're in a race against time with a thunderstorm coming, so I'm not going to be able to show you a lot of footage from this, but you'll get some sort of idea as to what you can get out of this little drone. Now, I know I'm a little bit late to the party doing a review of the DJI Mini 2 with the Pro out now, but anyway, as you know, they're not really reviews, they're sort of just my take on experiences with something. So I've had a little bit of time, not much time with this drone, but enough to give you some thoughts at least. Now, the Mini 3 Pro, of course, things like the sensors around the drone and things like that, I mean, are definite improvements, and I'm going to be taking this drone to Iceland with us. So you're probably wondering why we're not taking a Mini 3 Pro to Iceland and I'm taking this. It's because I'm very accustomed to using 8-bit footage, and really the expense isn't worth it for the 10-bit video out of the Pro, which is what you get out of the Pro now with the latest firmware update. I am pretty accustomed to editing with 8-bit footage. You just want to make sure that you're exposing for your highlights, and provided you're not losing anything in the highlights, you can still recover quite a bit in the shadows, and it's really not that bad to grade at all from my experience. And the video out of this is actually a lot easier to grade for some reason than some of the video from my previous DJI drones that should have almost the same camera, but I find the image quality has been improved somewhat in this drone anyways. Yeah, we'll probably catch you later back at my home studio. See ya, bye. So it was really nice having that headroom shooting with those ND filters because it was super bright out. I was shooting with an ND32 the entire time, and that allowed me to shoot at 1/60 at 30 FPS. Now, Was I expecting any problems with those K&F filters? No, I wasn't. They are a little bit cheaper than the Polar Pros, which I've bought for my other drones. But the reality is, nowadays it's a pretty trivial thing making an optically perfect piece of flat glass. A piece of flat glass. I'm not talking about lenses, I'm talking about flat glass. You really have to go cheap to find a piece of flat glass that is going to be a problem for you. What happens with cheaper filters is an issue with the coatings that they use. So that's really what you're paying for nowadays when it comes to your filters, is the coatings. And I'll tell you right now that the NDs from the neutral density filters from K&F are neutral, and of course that's what you want. So I've never had a problem with these ones I have on my main camera, my A7C. I've got two variable NDs that I use for my A7C. One that goes a little bit lower than the other one, but one goes as dark as 11 stops, so I'm never getting to that point where you get that X vignetting on that ND. Now, that being said, for people who are thinking they've got maybe a cheap ND, or variable ND I should say, and they are thinking about spending 250 bucks, well, it's not because your ND is cheap, it's because you're maxing out your variable ND. Just look down and make sure you're not going past your markers on the ND, and then once you know what the limit is of your variable ND, don't go there. If you want to spend the 250 bucks on a hard stop on your ND, because that's really the only difference between buying what I've got here from K&F and that certain other ND filter, you can go ahead. It's up to you, but I rather just look down and make sure that I am where I'm supposed to be. Anyway, and then it also gives me the freedom of spending more money on another ND, for instance, that goes down a little bit further, so I can cover more of a range and what have you. Anyway, there's my whole spiel on NDs. I've got nothing against NDs from Polar Pro or Signature Series NDs from Polar Pro. I've used their NDs before, and but I've only got good things to say about these K&F Concept NDs I've been using for this drone. And they really did come in handy for this, because it was a super bright day when I shot that footage that you saw. Alright, about flying the drone itself. How does it handle the wind? Well, it wasn't incredibly windy, but I have to say that this drone has handled pretty much like any other DJI drone that I've owned. Now that includes the bigger drones down to the Air, and so I'd say that performance-wise, unless you're getting into anything crazy, the Mini 2 is pretty decent. I think that if it got to the point it was windy enough that it would be a problem for the Mini 2, I probably wouldn't be flying any drone. As far as it handling wind, it's no real issue for me, at least. And as far as the way it handles otherwise, it's just like any other DJI drone, in my opinion. Now, of course, you have to be a little bit more aware of the fact that you haven't got the sensors that some of the other drones have. Besides that, no real issues. I did find myself sort of running out of range here and there, but it actually told me right on the screen it was probably because I was behind some trees. You're supposed to be flying within visual range anyway, so you know, keep that in mind, that you know, all it takes is some trees to sort of. I was probably a little too far anyway, so that was when I hit that home button and had to come back. So as you know, I appreciate you all dropping by. I hope you all got something out of this as usual. If so, leave me a thumbs up. If not, that's okay too. If you haven't subscribed, please do so. If you don't want to, that's okay as well. If you have, fantastic, and thank you. I appreciate it. If you don't want to miss any of these, hit that notification bell. If you've got any ideas for future shows, please leave that in the comments below, or maybe you just want to leave a comment below. Maybe you want to tell me about your experiences with the Mini 2. Until next time, keep working to make your chosen idea a reality. Peace. Peace.